Hi, I'm Johnny from ultimatepapermache.com, and today I'm going to do a sequel. This is just a clarification video for answering some of the questions that have come in the last couple of years since I put up my first video about my paper mache clay recipe. This recipe was created by me, like I said, about 2 years ago to replace the paper strips and paste that I had been using to create paper mache sculptures. The problem that I was having with the paper strips and paste, first of all, is that both the paper and the paste seem to always end up on my floor and on the dog and in my hair and everywhere else. But it also took really a long time to apply it, and it was really hard to make details like eyes and noses, and you just always seem to end up with something that was either too bumpy in the wrong places or too smooth in the wrong places. So I wanted something that was easier to use and a little closer to the instinctive way that we use real ceramic clay. But since that video went up and since I wrote my book, I'll pull it out here. Always have to have a little blurb for the book. Make animal sculptures with paper mache clay. Since this book came out and since the first video kind of went viral, it's now all over the internet, and I keep getting questions that I didn't properly answer in that first video. So I wanted to go through those questions just a little bit so that you don't have to search all over trying to find the answers to them. I know that you're probably going to have the same questions everyone else does, so I wanted to clarify things a little bit. The first thing I wanted to clarify, this is an armature that I haven't finished yet. We're working on a series of videos about how to make a paper mache cat, and he's not done yet, so I'm not going to actually cover him with the clay. But this is the way you actually use it. Several teachers would like very much to have a cheap and inexpensive substitute for ceramic clay for their students, because ceramic clay and modeling clay is really expensive, and they would like to be able to make something like this and allow their kids to really get their fingers in it and model something completely made out of the clay. This is not intended for that. This is the way it's used. It's kind of like frosting a cake. Just put it on there and smooth things out. And so you see I can lay this out really thin, like 1/8 of an inch, up to 1/4 of an inch. When it dries, and I also want you to notice, this is just masking tape over crumpled paper. There are no paper strips and paste on this at all. If you use this as a substitute for the paper strips and paste, you don't need to use anything else. This is all you need. It will dry really hard. Let me show you one of the things that I actually created for the book. Just to let you know, it paints really nicely, as you can see, and it's extremely hard when it's dry. But I just wanted to let you know, that's what it's for. It's not to create little items without an armature. It's intended to replace paper strips and paste. Now, all the other questions have been about the products that go into the clay. The first one that gets the most questions is the boiled linseed oil. I put this in the original recipe because this was used so extensively by the paper mache artists back in the Victorian era when they were making furniture, and someone said they made carriages even out of it. Paper mache was really big back then, and they used the boiled linseed oil because in their processes it made a harder, more waterproof product. But boiled linseed oil does contain chemicals. So we get a lot of questions about it. Do I have to use the boiled linseed oil? And the answer is absolutely not. If you're using this with children specifically, leave it out for sure. Don't use it. Anybody that might be playing or eating their art materials should not be using anything with boiled linseed oil in it. If you want the smooth texture that this actually helps get with the clay, substitute glycerin. Glycerin is something that you buy at the drugstore. I think it's used as a, oh gosh, I don't know what it's used for. Anyway, it's at the drugstore, and it's not terribly cheap, but you get a little bottle and it'll last for a really long time. Again, you're only using a tablespoon, or just leave it out. Now, next question. I use Elmer's Glue All for the glue in the recipe. I think one of my readers tried using Elmer's school glue and it didn't work. So if you're in the United States, Glue All is everywhere. You can get it in any store. I got this at the hardware store. You can get it at Walmart. You can get it anywhere. And again, you only need 3/4 of a cup in one recipe, which will, that dog that I showed you, one recipe was more than enough to cover that sculpture. So you don't have to buy the gallon bottle. If you live someplace other than the United States, it's really easy to find a glue that's really similar, but you won't be able to find this brand. So just look for a PVA glue. It might not say that right on the label, so you might have to ask the people at the hardware store to help you find it, but you can find it in almost every country. Next question. What is joint compound? If you have never remodeled a house, or if you've never had a hole in your wall, you may have never had any need to go to the hardware store and buy joint compound. So a lot of people write in wanting to know what the heck this stuff is. When you open up the bucket, what you see is something that looks an awful lot like plaster looks when you mix it up with water. But this is not plaster. It's made out of calcium carbonate and a lot of other things, I don't know what else. And it is intended to be used on walls to fill in cracks, and especially that seam that goes between two pieces of drywall or sheetrock. There's also a product called joint compound that you'd find in the plumbing department of a hardware store. I think it's made out of epoxy or something. You don't want that. Okay, the next question has to do with mold and how to keep mold out of it if you happen to live in something other than the desert situation where I do. What I would suggest is that you put about a tablespoon of bleach, just household bleach, in the water that you're going to be soaking your toilet paper in. Just put in the bleach, use warm water because it helps to make the toilet paper fall apart. Then throw in your paper and mix it around. Just sit it there just long enough for the paper to fall apart into little fibers and squeeze out the water. You still have enough bleach in your clay to kill all of the mold spores that are in there now. Over time, if you were to leave it out uncovered, it's a possibility that you would end up getting mold in your wet clay. But if you make sure to keep the clay covered, keep it in the refrigerator if you need to. If you need to use it over time, you can't get everything done in one day. And then also make sure that you dry your sculpture as fast as you possibly can. That's always really important when it comes to anything that has products in it that mold or other beasties would like to eat. Okay, so what I would suggest is that you put it in front of a fan. Fan and heat together would make it go even faster, but it's the moving air that really helps to dry it out. Make sure that you turn your sculpture if you have a fan blowing on it in one direction so that you don't dry it all just on one side. Just keep moving it around, and you should be able to get something that has about 1/8 of an inch layer up to 1/4 of an inch layer. It should be dry in a couple of days. I did mention in the first video that I use an Angel Soft brand, and for me the rolls were exactly the right size for the recipe, about 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 cups of wet, damp paper. But then I realized that Angel Soft actually comes in different sized rolls. I was using the regular roll, which is this one. It also comes in double rolls and mega rolls. So even if you get the same brand, I would suggest that you go ahead and measure the wet paper. 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 cups is what you need. If you use more than that, you're going to end up with a really dry, crumbly. You won't be able to use it. Won't work. You need something nice and smooth in order to smooth it over your armature. And that's the one last thing that I want to talk about right now. That's why I got out my cling wrap there. It's just some people like to have a really, really smooth surface on their sculptures, and sometimes it's not real easy to get it that way. There are two things though that help if you want it really nice and smooth. One is to get your knife just a little bit damp. Don't use your fingers, use a knife, and spread it over with a, and I don't have any water here, just spread it over, and the dampness will just smooth right over the clay, and it would really help. Don't get it real wet because then it will take longer to dry, but just a really damp, nice damp knife will help. The other thing, if that isn't still smooth enough, use a little piece of your plastic wrap like I just got out and put it over the clay that has been already applied to your armature, and just smooth it through the plastic. Sometimes it helps to go ahead and take your knife and just smooth it like that, and then pull your plastic off, and it'll be nice and smooth. Now you may still though end up with a few bumps, and that's just the nature of the stuff. It isn't perfect, you know. It's so much better than paper strips and paste, but it's not a perfect solution. So what I do, if I want something to be really, really smooth, I let the clay dry, and then because it's so incredibly hard when it's dry, it's actually difficult to sand. So what I'll do, instead of trying to sand it smooth, I'll put 2 or 3 layers of homemade gesso over the clay. And you can find recipes for that on my blog. If you're on my blog now, just go up to the nav bar up at the top, and you'll see paper mache recipes, and just scroll down. You'll find several different recipes for homemade gessos that you can allow to dry, and then instead of sanding them, just go ahead and use a lightly damp sponge, and you can get it just as smooth as you want to. You can make it like porcelain if you want to. So that's it for today. I just wanted to clear up some of the more common questions so that you don't have to keep searching all over for the answers. I hope this does help. I hope you enjoyed the clay if you're going to be making some. If you're not watching this out on my blog, please do come visit ultimatepapermache.com. I'm always happy to see you there. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.